Hey guys, it's Chris, and today I wanted to take some time to answer some questions. And Timur Al-Husban wrote in and asked a question on my eye drawing video. He says, "That helped me madly." Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Keep going, please. Love your videos. But can you please explain more on the eyebrow bone and how different people are? Some have hooded eyes and some don't, and how different expressions affect it. I would appreciate this much. Thank you. Okay, Timur, thanks so much for the kind comments and for your question. I will do just that. So I'm going to take this as a little tutorial on ethnicities and the difference between their eyes and some expressions as well. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the Asian eye over here, and then this is going to be Caucasian and African on this side. Okay, so let's start with the Asian eye. Let's start in profile because that's a bit easier. Okay, so the Asian eye, basically, it's a bit flatter. The way that the eyeball fits into the skull is there's less space between the contour of the nose and where we find the beginning of the eye. And generally, the profile of the Asian face is going to be a little smoother at the brow, and then the nose will be less, let's say, less extreme of a curve. Okay, it's going to be a gentler curve, slightly flatter, less sloped. Okay, and then when we get to the eye, we can just lay in a triangle here, a simple triangle on its side. Okay, we're going to get really no lid, no upper lid. It's going to be kind of a mono lid, if you will. Okay, and from there, that upper lid is very tightly will just wrap around the eyeball, around to the side, and then we'll see the underside of the lid just when it curves around. Let's put in the eyeball there, and then you'll see a nice S curve here into the caruncula or tear duct, and that'll make its way back out to the terminus of the outer part of the eye. Okay, so notice in this area, there's not really much of a lid. It's a monolid. Okay, and so this will be a bit in shadow. This will be in light, and then we'll have the eyebrow. Just like a little comma or parentheses. Okay, just real simple. And then we'll get some tone back here as the eye goes away from the light. It sort of goes back into the eye socket. And then we have the pupil and the iris here. We'll just put that in. There'll be cast shadow onto the surface of the cornea from the top lid. And we'll have a shadow in here where the tear duct is. Okay, and then less of a lower lid too. You'll get some lower lid, but generally it goes into the cheek pretty flat, straight down. Okay, like that. So not much slope with the nose into the forehead. The eye is pretty kind of straight up and down the way it fits. Okay, it's not at an angle. And then We have eyelashes. Okay, let's look then at the difference in profile at a Caucasian African eye setup. Okay, so these are different ethnicities here. And okay, so forehead into the superciliary arch, okay, and then out to the nose is a little bit more of a curve, a little bit more extreme movement, okay, and then the eye sits at an angle. The Asian eye kind of sat straight up and down this way. This one is more at an angle this way. Okay, so I'm just going to draw my triangle there, just like that, kind of sitting at an angle. There's a little more distance between the edge of the nose, forehead, inward towards where the eye really is. So it's going to sit in that eye socket, okay? And the upper lid's going to curve around. So we'll see some of the underside here where I'm putting shadow. And then we may see, just exaggerate a little bit, the lower lid coming around. And we'll see the top part of the lower lid, that'll be in light, okay? And then we have the iris, pupil. Okay, so you can clearly see the lids wrapping around. You can see the angle that it's going this way, okay? And then you will have a lid, usually a pronounced lid that you can see, okay? You might call it hooded. And then the eye socket, you'll kind of see it fitting in here. And I'll just draw a bone of the eye socket, kind of like that, okay? Underside, underplane, facing away from the light, that'll get shadow, and it'll come out and get lighter. We'll have eyelashes, depending on who it is, gender, etc. But I'll usually just do one thick lid and then kind of a shape going back, okay? We've got the shadow on the cornea. Iris has a value and a color. And then we have a lower lid. Comes in and then out and then goes down to the cheek. Okay, and you may see the tear duct in there, right? And maybe some lower lashes in groups like this. Okay, and then of course the eyebrow. Just going to straighten out that forehead a little bit. So the eyebrow's a lot closer to the profile, the contour, that outside contour of the forehead, and the eye itself is way in, okay, this way. So there's a lot of space right here between the eye and the outside line of the nose, okay, and then you'll get some lower lid depending on the age and gender. You'll see it more or less. Okay, so that's the Asian and Caucasian from the side view. Let's move on to the front view. Okay, so let's do the difference between Caucasian and Asian from the front. Okay, so here on the left is the Asian side, on the right is going to be the Caucasian African side. So generally if we just drop a horizontal right there, the Asian eye is going to be off on an angle on average from that horizontal line. So you can place in 2 diagonals right there. That's going to tell you a lot. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and just draw a nice smooth arc, just like that, and just a slight curve, and then an almond shape this way, back out. And let's do the same thing on this side. Make sure we're lined up here. You can have one eye's distance between the two eyes on average. So I'll just swing an arc here, like monolid, Asian eye, basically at an angle, okay, this way. And then you're going to have your, basically your eyebrows, right? If they're younger, they have bigger, bushier eyebrows for both male and female. And as they get older, the eyebrows get more tapered, less hair, less bushy. It's going to go off into shadow here, in here, but not as much because there's just not as much. It's, like I said, it's a monolid. It's not very deep, and so we don't get a lot of shadows. Okay, just the eye curving, turning back inside the socket here. Okay, so that's basically an Asian eye from the front. So let's just compare that. We'll just drop a little shadow here. Little pupil. Give a gradation on the iris. What, highlight number 1, highlight number 2. Okay, so let's go over to the Caucasian African eyes. Okay, so we got that horizontal here. And the eyes are generally gonna just go ahead and line up as an almond. Not quite, but top lid is going to be, the apex is going to be towards the nose. The bottom lid, the apex of the curve is going to be towards the outside. You're generally gonna have a lid that you can see, but not always. And you can break that lid down into planes here. Front plane, plane on the left, plane on the right, and then the lower lid into the tear duct. And then that lower lid is just going to have usually a tone right here, not a hard line right there. The upper lid has that hard line and shadow across the sclera. Lower lid, don't do that. Okay, make it a very subtle tone, and that does a lot. And then we've got that brow bone curving in on that outside and then tucking in to the lid, right? You can draw that eyebrow just like a triangle almost that sits right on top of the front of the forehead, just like that. It's kind of a slanted triangle. That works. And then we'll see the glabella here where it's like a keystone. We don't see that as much on the Asian eye, but there's that keystone shape into the nasal bone, something like that. So those are some real bony landmarks. And then usually in here, you know, you'll see the brow bone, part of that orbital socket there inside, and then that'll get shadow. And then we've got the eyebrow. This will get shadow. Let's get the other eye in here. So I'll measure one eye over to get my inside of the right eye. So it's tear duct to tear duct is one eye distance, right? So I'm just gonna kind of block this in real quick with straight lines and then give myself a curve. Try to mimic that left eye, what I did there. The upper lid is definitely going to be covering, usually at rest, we'll be covering the top part of the iris. You've got that brow bone could be really tight coming into here, right up against that upper lid, and then into the glabella right there. So on men, it's going to be a lot more defined, this glabella. On women, it'll be a lot less defined, and a lot more smooth. So we'll go out to the side plane of the nose, out to the side plane of the nose. reduct. Okay, and there's that lower lid, which I'm just going to give a tone. That kind of really sells the illusion a lot more than like a hard line. The lid can be separated into 3 planes like I did before. Front and 2 side planes. I could just come in, maybe give that front lid a little more light. Or you can do a lid or an eyebrow a little bit more like this, right? I give you 2 ways to do eyebrows. All right, then that's going to curve under. It goes into the eye socket on the outside of the eye. You'll get all kinds of variation in the eyelids, how much of it you can see, depending on the age, gender, expression of the pose or the person's attitude, what they're feeling. Okay, so let me pop in a highlight here. You don't need much. You don't need a lot of detail. You don't need a lot of pupil. Just need to kind of show the general impression. So I'm going to go out this way, swing it out. Okay, so that's kind of the difference between the Asian on the left and the Caucasian African on the right. Okay, and basically it's that setup along the horizontal line. The Asian is at an angle, and the Caucasian African is just more go straight, set up along that horizontal line, just like that. So let's move on to look at the Asian eyes. Okay, 2 types of Asian eyes that I'm gonna look at here, and one of them is going to be the monolid. It's the Asian monolid. We've kind of covered that. So it's the monolid versus the double lid for the Asian eye. We got the monolid versus a double. So we take that Asian eye from the front, even from 3/4, but we've got the eyebrow. The eye is at an angle, a little bit narrower than the Caucasian African eye. Upper eyelid covers the iris on the top. Not too much, right, in the way of a lid. Have very subtle shading. As the plane goes away from the light, if the light is coming from the front, then this will be light and this will be in shadow. But again, not deep shadow, very subtle. And then we could get some lower lid, it'll be subtle. It's not super defined, and it's generally smaller than in Caucasian African counterparts. Not too much eyelashes either. Side plane of the glabella, side plane of nose, and then if this person's a young person, they'll have a bigger, bushier eyebrow. So let's make it big and bushy. Not much lid. Let's look at it slightly from 3/4 view. Just going to draw the impression of the eye socket, nose, forehead. So what you're going to get, you won't see a real lid, but you will see the bump of the eyeball just on a closed eye. And then here's the eyeball inset inside the socket of the eye. Make sure you do that. So you've got a little shadow here. Lower lid, eyeball itself, wrapping around, iris in here. So there is the highest point right there. Okay, it's the highest. It's the biggest feature there on an Asian eye. Okay, then I'm just gonna go ahead and draw a eyebrow here. Subtle shading on the outside of where the terminus is on the outside, and also subtle on the inside because there's not a lot of plane changes. Remember, it's a monolid. Things are a lot more subtle. Give it a little bit of a lower lid. eyebrow wraps around to the other side of the forehead, so I'll show that little peak there. Just kind of a little bit of a higher plane right here. So let's move on to the double lid. Basically we have the same thing. The eye's at an angle, tapers right into the tear duct, then comes around. Because the eyes are a little bit smaller in a sense, the lids don't really have as many curves in them. You'll see it'll look like the eyeball is, or the iris is bigger because there's less space on left and right of the whites of the eyes, right? So the Asian eye will tend to look kind of bigger. And now we can just, right from the tear duct on the top, just pull a curve and make a tight upper lid, double lid. It's not very exaggerated. It's not like a hooded lid like in the Caucasian eye. It's very tight, but it can be seen. And we'll go out this way, tear duct, and then a very subtle lower lid. Just very beautiful, subtle. Asian people tend to look younger because they don't have a lot of plane changes and lots of deep set stuff going on. It's generally more flat, and so they don't have a lot of wrinkles, and it just appears, they got good genes for that. Thicken up that eyelash on top, just a shape. I can pull out one or two, but that's it. And then we have the eyebrow. Let's make this one really thin. Side plane of the nose. Sometimes you'll see a tone here on the outside edge of the Asian eye. It's kind of just, it's there a lot. It's just a subtle tone. If you look at Asian eyes, you'll notice that. It's almost like a built-in makeup or eyeliner on that upper lid. It's very interesting. And so it's a little bit darker because the eye is a little bit more closed, and so there's not a lot of white on the white sclera part of the eye. The monolid is a lot thicker than the double lid. The double is thick, but not as thick as the monolid. The tear duct tends to be, the top part pulls over and you see really kind of like a letter V. It's not round, it's just more of a V. That top lid pulls right over and then just makes a direction change to the lower lid. Okay, so that hopefully covers the monolid and the double lid of the Asian eye. And then let's look at the Caucasian African. There's kind of a lot more going on. A lot more plane changes, a lot more lids, a lot more kind of anatomy showing. Let's go ahead and put some tone down. See what we can sculpt out of here. So we get the eye itself. That lower lid is going to pull out from inside the upper lid. Okay, so we have upper lid, eye socket, the brow bone of the eye socket right there. Much more pronounced lower lid. And then we have an upper lid here, lower lid, inside, top part. Okay. So let's kind of go with that. So we have upper lid, lower lid, and the eye, the Caucasian eye, the African eye is very much more deep set. It's deep set into the eye socket. Deep set. So that means there's a lot more tonal variation going on. Okay, the Asian eye sits more closer to the surface, so it's flatter. The Caucasian African eye is more deep set, so there's more plane changes. It's a little more moody, you might say, and has some dynamic movement to it. Wraps around here so that gets a tone. I'm just drawing with colored pencil on top of the pan pastel, which works pretty good. In here, sometimes it gets direct light, sometimes it's in shadow. So we'll put it in shadow right there. And we'll leave the pupil or the upper lid getting some light. And then going back into the cast shadow of the brow bone onto that upper lid. I always love that shadow of the upper lid onto the eyeball, and it just blends right into the pupil. Instead of drawing a real solid pupil, just let it fade right into the pupil from that shadow. And then we'll do a little bit of tone on the lower lid, just to bring it out. Start sculpting it a little bit more to make it different than the Asian eye. And here you can put some lower lashes, just very subtle. So you've got a thicker lower lid. Okay, the Asian eye has just a thinner overall lower lid in comparison. I mean, so you get these nice deep creases right in here, right? Deep crease. Okay, the Asian eye, you get no crease. You get a lot more eyelashes on the Caucasian African eye. So you can go ahead and play that up a little bit. You get a bigger, thicker, lower lid. So you want to play that up. And that can be really, obvious on an older person. You can have the double lid, right? That's how you age people, is you create a lot more wrinkles and creases, double lids, droopy upper lids, and so on. In an African eye, just real quick, so you can have that really tight crease. You can show a lot of lid. You can almost have a hooded lid. That crease is that brow bone coming in tight against that upper lid. Okay, so you can get really tight in here and then come out like a hook. One characteristic of the African eye that you can kind of differentiate from the Caucasian eye is the possibility of a different eyebrow. So let's kind of throw that in there. There can be a real arched kind of eyebrow. So I'm going to give it that kind of Nike kind of shape almost, and then really arch it up near the outside. Okay, that's real beautiful, beautiful exotic eyes with the African ethnicity. I don't like to call it race. We're all the same race. We're all the human race. But it's just the different ethnic groups and cultures that we're trying to bring out here and show their differences and so that we can make the point in whatever drawing, illustration, painting, whatever we have to do to carry our story, to tell our story, we can do it. Difference in the eyebrows between the Caucasian and, it's a possible difference, difference there. So we have like a kind of a arched eyebrow versus a more straight brow on the Caucasian. All right, so guys, that's gonna do it for the ethnicity part, and then I want to go ahead and cover the expressions, okay, some basic expressions. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention before we move on, in the Asian eye, you've got deep sweeping corners, right? So they come around and they just sweep out that way, right? You can play that up, okay? And not so much, I mean, you'll have it, but it'll really stand out because there's not much going on with the upper and lower lid, so you'll have that deep sweeping kind of characteristic in the Asian eye. Okay, everybody, that's all we have time for. I hope you enjoyed this video on the various differences between the ethnicities as far as their eyes are concerned. Next week, I'm going to finish up with the expressions in the eyes, specifically around the eyebrows. So remember to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.